Good afternoon, SaaStock. Great to be here. It is an honor to lead this discussion with two powerhouse people and talent acquisition leaders. I'll start by introducing myself. My name's Andi Vanetta-Smith. I am an operating partner at Stage 2 Capital. We are the first VC run and backed by 500-plus go-to-market operators from best-in-class technology companies. We bring a mix of capital and go-to-market expertise to our portfolio. I run LP relations, so I sit at the center of our flywheel and match our best-in-class LPs and operators to our portfolio. And in a former life, I ran a recruiting firm in San Francisco, California called Vanetta Partners for about 10 years. Where we placed sales, marketing, and CS executives and built their respective teams. And we did that for stealth to Series B stage companies. So that's about the time that I met Miss Carolyn Betts, so we go way back. So I have a love for recruiting, and it's great to be here moderating this discussion. I'll pass over the introduction to Carolyn next.
Well, thank you, Andi. Great to be on stage with you. I am Carolyn Betts, founder and CEO of Betts, go-to-market hiring platform for sales, marketing, customer success people, kind of like a dating app, but for talent. And we also have our cryptocurrency Recruit Coin that incentivizes people to engage with our network.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm Carle Quinn. I'm the Chief People Officer at Workato. Workato is the leading integration and automation platform and is used to help simplify the way work gets done. So really excited to be here. And her job sounds a lot more fun than mine.
Beautiful. So to kick off, we'd love to hear from the audience, get a sense for who's in the room. So with a show of hands, we'd love to know the size of your organization. So please raise your hand if you're at a 1 to 10 person employee size company. Early stage, okay. 10 to 50 employees, okay. 50 to 100, okay. And 100 plus? All right, awesome. And next, with regards to kind of key talent initiatives you're prioritizing, I'm going to list off 5 here. I want you to pick 3 and raise your hand with regards to what you're prioritizing now. From hiring the right people to building culture, leadership development, candidate experience, and developing an interview process. Raise your hand if you're prioritizing hiring the right people right now. All right. Building culture. Okay. Leadership development. Very good. Candidate experience. Okay. And developing an interview process. Okay. Good. This is going to help us kind of calibrate our conversation and the content based on your priorities. We've got 3 major themes we're going to cover today: founder-led talent acquisition, retention, and innovation in talent acquisition. So starting with founder-led talent acquisition, Ms. Carolyn Betts, if you could kick us off, what advice would you give an early-stage company that has the founder at the helm of recruiting?
Yeah, well, we see this a lot, right? So founder creates, amazing company. It's been founder-led sales, right? They're going out, bringing in all the deals themselves, and they get to a point where there's product market fit, and now it's time to, not be the only person out there selling. And, it's a big challenge for a lot of people, especially relatively early stage, to, bring in amazing talent to essentially replace themselves as the person going out and getting the deals in the door. So, the thing that I look at the most is, has someone done early stage sales before? That, evangelical type of person that can take what the founder has built and go out there and replicate it, create process around it, and get the founder into more situations like, we're in here up on stage and, that and not necessarily running the entire sales process. So I think the most important thing that I look at is, have they done this before? I see a lot of people bringing big company people in, right, that have that brand name, and those people tend to flounder and fail in an earlier stage environment. You're smiling up here. Maybe you've experienced that yourself. So, yeah.
I'll just add a couple things. So there's 3 things that come to mind for me. The first is as you're looking to build your team, take the time to define success. What do you need in that role? So often we're moving quickly and we don't take the time to really define what does success look like. And two, don't just focus on what are the needs right now. Think about how will this role evolve in the next 12 to 18 months, because you need to hire somebody essentially that can deliver what you're going to need in the next couple of months. So be future fit. So think about it from that perspective. The third thing that comes to mind is culture. We all know that culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, as they say. And so building a team that has the right cultural attributes that you want to have in your organization is really, really important, and how to assess for that will be important as well. But one of the things that really breeds a strong culture is good connection. People are willing and want to work well with others. So I think that would be the other area that I would say is really important. By the way, culture ultimately becomes the least desirable behavior that you tolerate. So I'm going to repeat that, right? So culture ends up becoming the least behavior or trait that you observe or that you're going to tolerate. So think about the type of people you're bringing in to your organization. Culture is one of the things that they do talk about in a lot of startup organizations that can make or break your startup. So be wise in that area.
Awesome. Powerful. And to expand on this a little bit more, and we'll start with you, Carolyn, at what point does the founder step aside from the interview process, and any advice to founders for avoiding pitfalls, i.e. staying involved for too long, and or how to implement a team to scale the recruiting function, when and how?
Yeah, so I am a huge fan of having as few people as possible in an interview process, and really empowering the leader to hire and develop their own team. So, like I said, we do go to market. So I'm assuming at the point that a CRO or sales leader, head of sales is brought in, the founder should no longer, in my opinion, be involved in the hiring process. Because there's two things. You're either vetting or you're selling. And if the founder is involved, it really takes away the power from the leader to build and develop their own team. And I used to make this mistake all the time, right? I was the final step in the interview process at Bets. And forever, I would not get out of my own way. And then, someone came in and, and Carle and I were talking about this earlier, right? About 50% of all hires that you'll bring into the organization don't work out, okay? And so, that is the expectation. However, as the founder, if you're the final step in the interview process and, the person doesn't work out, they're like, well, you met them, you gave the thumbs up, or, if I give the thumbs down and they decide to hire the person anyway and they don't work out, it's kind of hard not to do the I told you so, which is an amazing, leadership tactic with your team, right? Like, nobody wants to hear that. So I say empower your leaders, step out of the interview process as soon as you have somebody managing that team.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I'm just going to build on that. Having the capability to assess talent is really important, right? Again, knowing kind of what that stat is, that 50-50. So one of the ways in which you might consider building that skill set of how do I assess somebody? When they answer me, is that a good answer? Is that a great answer? Or are they just giving me fluff? Like, you don't really know, especially if you don't interview all the time. So one of the things that you can do in a startup is start to build that capability. And you can do that by putting together selection teams. So that could be 6 to 8 people. Not that they would interview every single time. Totally agree with you. You cannot have that many people. But you want to be able to rotate, right? So everybody's schedules, somebody might be traveling or out of the office. But if you say, hey, we're going to have a selection team for go-to-market, we're going to have a selection team for our product team, and then maybe for corporate functions, HR, legal, finance. But build that team, and so they get a good sampling of interviewing over and over and over again. And then over time, you can start to bring new people into that cohort, if you will, or that selection team to also develop that capability. It's really, really important that you're assessing the right skills, not just to do the job, but do they fit into the organization? A lot of research out there will say you are better off hiring someone that has the right character, the right integrity, the right cultural aspects that fit into the company and the culture that you're trying to develop. You can teach them job skills in many opportunities.
Awesome. That's a great segue to our next theme, which is around retention and how do we keep these amazing hires. As we know, people don't leave companies, they leave people, they leave bad managers. And this is especially hard in the new remote working world. It's a special challenge on our hands. So question, and we'll start with Carolyn. What advice do you have for both founders and larger organizations working to maintain human connection in a hybrid world? And are there any new work models or org structures you've seen that have a positive impact on talent acquisition, growth, and employee retention?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I've seen, and with my company as my main example, but then also the thousands of other companies that we've helped to build, is empowering people to really feel ownership over their own job and their part of the company. And so that also involves putting really great systems into place to have a structure in which people can feel empowered to then add creativity to their own role from the overall structure. Another thing, so Bets, pre-COVID, we had 5 offices at that point in time. We'd had more at one point, but in 2020, we had SF, LA, Chicago, Manhattan, and Austin. And I would always, anecdotally judge people based off of really silly things like, how often they came to the office, how late they worked, if they wanted to work from home. I would think that the person wasn't bought in. And when COVID hit, we were forced to go remote. We also are a self-funded bootstrap company. So in that being our structure, we started getting out of all of our office leases as quickly as we could to save money. And now we have become a remote-first culture. The only office we have left right now is our Manhattan one. And the reason we still have it is the lease doesn't expire until this summer. And then they will be going to a WeWork or something along those lines 1 or 2 days a week. And the reason I bring this up is, as a leader, I really had to transform my mindset of, basing our talent and their buy-in and, off of, data and performance as opposed to, those types of things. And so I guess for us, the empowering of people through data and having great processes and structure in place operationally really makes people feel like they're set up for success. We also did these twice-a-year summits. And with the current market, we've had to put those on ice. And so we don't get to do those anymore. And we did have people leave because Bets used to be really fun. And then it's not as much fun when we don't have as much business. And,
It's still fun. It's still a lot of fun, trust me.
It is what it is. So, but those people might have not, been the right ones for the long haul anyway. So it is what it is. How about you, Carle?
Awesome.
Yeah, I would just share, hybrid work is not probably going to change anytime soon. So we have to learn how do we build an engaging workforce, and all the things that you've just mentioned, so many leaders are struggling with. I would say there's a couple of things that you can do to try to build that culture and the right workforce being remote. One, if you don't offer remote work, you're probably not going to get the best talent. So one thing you have to think about is that's just the way it is, especially for right now. 2, communication. They always say communication is good, it's helpful, but you need to be communicating to a point where you feel like you're over-communicating because, again, a number of your employees are sitting probably in their home. Some might choose to go to a library or WeWork or something like that. But you're going to need to make sure you're communicating and being very, very transparent where you can. That is going to build trust. That's going to create that connection to you and your company and to each other. So I think that'll be really important. The other piece I would say is, invest in social capital. When I say social capital, that is making sure you're bringing your teams together. So maybe not the whole company or not the whole department, but you could bring in your team. And whether that's once a week, right? Hey, Wednesdays, we do an all hands. So let's just invite people into the WeWork. Let's get some lunch. Let's have some, conversations. It could be monthly. It could be quarterly. But instead of having the investment in real estate, especially for, a number of startups, take that money. You don't get to put that somewhere else. You have to invest in that human connection, because without it, if people aren't connected, they're not willing to give the shirt off their back, right, to really go and do the incredible things that they want to do. So those would be just some of the things I would add to that.
I love it. And we kind of touched on this, but if we want to go a little bit deeper into really creating an irresistible company culture and like what has changed for the hybrid worker, what's attracting them, like gone are the days of the packed office with the every meal served and on-site yoga, right? Like the perks and what's attracting employees has completely changed. So if you want to go just a little bit deeper for the audience on how to attract and create an irresistible culture that hybrid workers want to work for.
Absolutely, and I'm going to piggyback on what Carly said about the remote work. We have a number of clients that still have, we have some that have 5 days a week, and some that do the hybrid, and then also, a large amount that do remote. And it's interesting, during this time, as more and more companies are laying people off, people that, my team used to say things like, okay, if you're not remote, like nobody's going to want to work there. And, things like that are a little bit hyperbole. But really, like being very thoughtful and intentional. Now, even these 5-day-a-week in the office companies are able to hire talent right now because people are more desperate for jobs. I'm just going to tell it like it is. That is a fact. Now, that is a terrible strategy, in my opinion, moving forward, right? The market is going to pick up, and these people are going to have more options. And if they are, feeling stressed and, and especially like Carly said, for, the older workforce that have families and other obligations, like, if you're building an SDR team and people need to be in the office 5 days a week, great. Like, you're going to be able to hire people in their 20s that don't have kids, that live in the city, et cetera. But, if you want to build a more diverse environment, that is not, in my opinion, the right strategy to do it. Now, we tell people this, and, if that is what they want to do, fine, we'll find them talent to do it. But, an irresistible culture, and, I think a lot of those companies do that because that's what they know, very much like what I said before from my own personal example of building bets and having those 5 offices. However, really thinking about overall how, your team, to what Carly said, can come together and feel connected with the mission in a very strategic way. And so, tactically, what does that look like, right? All hands. Bringing the whole company together, being very transparent about what's happening in the business, what's going well, what's not. Treating people like humans. And I know this sounds like table stakes, but it isn't always like that when you treat your employees as if they, have no other options and their only thing is for, them to come work for you. And, you say jump, I say how high. That mentality is no longer viable in this ecosystem. So, transparency, communicating what's going well, what's not, treating people like humans. And another thing is, if you do have to make tough decisions as a business owner, as a CEO founder, being very communicative about that. We've had to do multiple rounds of layoffs. Since 2020, we've had to let a lot of people go. Then we, as the great rehiring happened, we started hiring a bunch of people back. And then, things went down again and we had to make some more difficult decisions. And the last 2 times we did it, we created a new process. And we got feedback that people have never seen execution of making really tough decisions go so well. And, people are interested. But the basic thing here is, the transparency and treating people like humans is what we've done that works very well for us to have retention and people really wanting to work here.
Yeah, and also when you think about building an irresistible organization, Josh Bersin He did a ton of research on this, and the things that attract employees or future employees has shifted a little bit. And so depending on what market you're in, depending on season of life your employees are in, they value different things. And remember, the most important thing is everyone wants to be valued. They want the opportunity to be part of something bigger than themselves. So if you want to, you could do a survey, right? I'm sure SurveyMonkey's free. There's lots of different ways, but you could look at this article from Josh Bersin. He's got a chart. You could kind of get a sense of like, what do your employees want? What do they feel like they need most? So that would be one area. Two, another huge thing to attract workers right now is the 4-day work week. I don't have this at my company. I want to bring this to my company. There is a ton of research. A number of companies have done this already. The research shows they did not lose productivity. They are getting the exact same productivity that they got when they worked 5 days a week. So they're not getting less, they're not performing more, but they're doing the same. But the wellness and the mental health of the employees, they're able to contribute and be more creative. And when you think about what's going to stand, out between you and your competition, it's going to be the creativity and the innovation that comes from your team. So if they feel like they are able to thrive in life, not just in the workplace, but in their, personal life as well, you're actually going to get more from them. So that would be the other thing I would say. And by the way, as a startup, you maybe can't afford to pay at the same rate as a larger company. So offering a 4-day work week, people will come for less hours and they get, my salary is going to take a 10 or 15% hit because I'm going to work 4 days a week. So that's just one thing to think about. The other big thing I would say is, how work gets done today is not working for anyone, right? In every aspect. We all have our cell phones. I was telling somebody last night, it's so simple to do life, except for when I walk into the workplace. So if I want to schedule a reservation to go out to dinner, I can do that in 30 seconds. Open table, pick a place, good to go. But why does it take me 20 minutes to find a conference room, right? Like, I'm wasting time. So think about how you can leverage technology, right? Especially for startups. There's a startup community where a lot of companies will donate or give their, under a certain number of employees, take advantage of the technical capability. Of course, automating transactional tasks. People want purpose, they want meaning in what they do. They don't want that transaction of you come in, you do these things for me and I pay you. That's going away, right? People want to have a relationship. They want to have a connection, and those are going to be the things that are going to be really important for you as you continue to build up your businesses.
I love it. So we're switching gears now to innovation and talent acquisition. I would argue all of the things that you shared are, as a result of having to innovate culturally through efficiency, like given what's happened in the last couple years and kind of the macroeconomy and all of the major shifts we've seen. Obviously, we've got AI making a big splash. We've seen this year a ton of layoffs and reorgs. So there's a lot shifting and shaking. So on the topic of innovation and talent acquisition, let's start with you, Carolyn. What type of new organizational structures are you seeing given the do more with less approach to growth?
In terms of organizational structures, you know what? I'm going to let Carle handle that because she is more the expert on that.
Yeah, so, when you're building, and this isn't new, but specifically now, when you're building your organizational structures, so often we're like, oh, well, there's a finance function, and these are all the people that work there. And, oh, there's a sales function or a customer success function. If you actually take a step back and you think about how work actually gets done, it is a network, right? So, like, all these people work, cross-functionally. They work across the world. And that's how work actually gets done. So the first step you need to be thinking about when you want to think about your organizational structure is, what am I trying to accomplish? What are the goals? What are the priorities? How am I going to measure my success at the end of the year? That has to happen first, right? And again, every 3 months, God knows what could come, right? We've seen a lot of things. Disruption is the new normal, whether it's geopolitical, whether it's pandemics, right? There's things that are just coming that we can't control. But think about what are the outcomes, like what are the priorities for the business? Second, what has to happen to achieve those, right? Like what does the work need to what work has to happen in order for me to achieve those things? So often, particularly in a startup, you're all focused on like sales, right? I just got to hit these sales. I got to do it. And you say things, you do things just to get the result, which is the sales, which is, cash is king, don't get me wrong. But that should be the outcome of you doing all of the right things. When you put your customer first, what's the value you want to bring to your customers? That is actually going to drive the right behaviors, and then the result, right, is the sale. So think about what's the work that you need to do to drive the outcomes you need to in your business. Then start to think about, how do I organize a team against these? And that might mean you're pulling people from different functions if you think about, how historically companies are structured. So I would just maybe comment a little bit in terms of that. So we are starting to see some shifts, people thinking differently about how work gets done. Also seeing automation and technology and all of those things start to do it. So all of the transactional activities as well, that's going to change organizational structures and how people get work done. They don't want to do the transactional stuff anyway. I mean, think back 20 years ago in recruiting, you had a person, like once we hired somebody, they would send an email. Hi, facilities, please make sure that there's a desk for Carle when she comes to work on X date, send. And then the next email, hi, IT, please make sure you have a laptop for Carle. Now, in some of these systems, and again, depending on your organization, you may or may not have an HR system, but the minute you hit hire, all those workflows are automated now, right? So that job doesn't exist anymore. So just think about, and you mentioned AI. Mm-hmm. AI is going to change everything. I don't think it's necessarily as bad, right? Remember Y2K, some of us? Like the world was going to end, right? So when you look at AI, I think is going to be one of the ways in which productivity will shift and change since the second industrial revolution, right? The supply chain, the assembly line in the car, right? Think about Ford. I think AI is going to bring a whole new level of productivity that we haven't seen. And yes, it's going to change jobs. Many people think, hey, we've got to be careful, job security, these things are going to come, whether it's robots. The data actually shows automation and AI has actually created more jobs than it has eliminated. So that's interesting. There's just different things, right? So when you think about what humans can do, the creative, the critical thinking, the connection, those are going to continue to be there. Now, we all know what a mega trend is declining birth rates. So it's kind of the perfect storm. Thank God we have technology coming forward. Today, there's 11 million jobs, like a gap in terms of workers to fit jobs, 11 million today. By 2030, that's going to be 85 million. So like it or not, humans and machines are going to have to come together. We just have to figure out a way in which we can do it to make work easy and simple. We want to work smarter, not harder. We want to leverage the great technology advancements that come our way. Obviously, there's areas probably around ethics and self-driving cars and things like that. It's like, hey, do you hit the post or do you hit the person, right? Like there's going to be decisions that are going to be programmed into some of this stuff. But that's how I would maybe hit some of that.
And you're kind of already speaking to the final question of this segment, which is, AI will be replacing a lot of the roles that you've historically placed or recruited for.
Yeah.
And while we don't have a crystal ball as to how this will ultimately impact things, if you have any final words of advice on, for founders with regards to AI, Carolyn, if you have anything to add there.
Absolutely. And I think that the companies that we're seeing that are really leveraging AI to replace, a lot of the content creation is a perfect example, right? And like most people that are in content don't like writing blogs with a bunch of buzzwords, just like have it show up on SEO, right? Like that is not really like a highly skilled job that people are very excited to have, right? And so a lot of these things are really upping the level of, what their job really is. So as you guys know, we do go-to-market hiring, sales, marketing, customer success. Okay, the content creation role is going to be, a lot more, it's going to up everyone's game considerably to be spending their time doing more things that they really love. Think about sales. How many people love putting stuff in the CRM, all the time, right? How many people, those more mundane tasks can now be automated through AI. And, there's a number of products that are even here today that do these things, that then give people the opportunity to spend more time understanding the market, creating relationships, taking, these deals to the next level, and innovating technology, versus just, like how things, the SDR role, I think it will mostly be replaced by technology. But enterprise sales, I think, is going to be an even more interesting job for people in the future.
Yeah.
The only other thing I would just add is, and I know we're kind of running tight on time here before we get jumped into Q&A, like we saw after COVID, right, there was a slow little trickle of where customer demand came back. I think over the next maybe quarter or two, we're going to see more of a hockey stick, which will be different. So have your plans be thinking about when the market flips, customer demand picks up, are you ready? Do you have the right recruitment strategies? Do you have a partner? Because again, many companies just have laid off their recruiter, so you can't go out and hire more. So you're going to have the right, and think of it like an accordion, right? Like, do you have a plan when the market pivots and customer demand increases? Who are you going to work with to fill that pipeline of talent for you? So that's just maybe a leaving thought on that.
Love that. Let's shift to questions from the audience since we're running up on time here. Open floor. Does anyone have a question for Carolyn or Carle? All right. Maybe with a mic one more time so the rest of the room can hear.
Fantastic. So you mentioned your remote first culture since COVID, and you've got the one lease left coming up. How are you driving that same accountability and productivity at home when they're remote first compared to an office?
Yeah. Now I am founder, CEO of Bets. I have a COO that runs the company operationally. And he was in place as our VP of Finance before he was in that role. And so we have our employees are mostly sales, recruiting, the ones that do real searches for companies, and then also the folks that manage our clients on the platform. We are an incredibly data-rich company. We understand, and so there's a couple things. We do regular NPS with our clients, which is one of the most important metrics that we look at. And we track, all the data. So, I'll give you an example of a client that is on our platform. We can see exactly, how many jobs they have open, how many candidates are interviewing for every one. We then, and if they have at least 3 candidates interviewing on the platform, that job is considered covered at that moment. And we then look at the data of what percentage of each recruiter's jobs are covered. And then we manage to that. And so if they're not covered over a certain period of time, we continue to have these conversations, but it's all based off of the data and the NPS are the 2 things we look at.
All right, we're wrapping up our session. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Lovely work, ladies. That was amazing. Really powerful stuff.
Thanks for having
me. Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, Carle, Quinn.